Hello everyone, my name is Megan and this is my 3 worlds presentation. The scripture that I chose was Matthew chapter 6, 19 through 34. And this is basically Jesus is kind of saying not to store up treasures here on earth. He is saying if you store up all of these treasures here on earth, they are going to get ruined, they're going to get stolen. There's really no reason for you to do that, because what you should be doing is storing your treasures up in heaven, within your heart, within your faith. The literary world of this reading includes the discussion of Jesus kind of explaining that materialistic possessions will not go with you when you go to heaven. He is letting it be known that all the fancy things that you buy, all of the things that you put into here on earth, they will remain on earth. However, if you put your faith, your love, and your heart in heaven, that's where your treasure in your heart will be. So when you die and you go to heaven, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be up in heaven where you store it. So with that being said, in the context of this sermon, humility and devotion to God is more important than all of the earthly possessions that you will have. Because like I said before, they will remain here on earth. As to when you put your faith and your love and devotion to God, your treasures will already be stored up in heaven for you. They'll be waiting for you up there. I actually chose this passage because I am not gonna lie, I kind of come from a family who's always had nice things, and regardless of my parents or I worked hard for it or not, I do like to have nice things. But it was just kind of eye-opening. I mean, I knew all along that these things won't be taken with me. I know that deep in my heart. It's just more of, I like to have nicer things. That's really all that it comes down to. But after reading through all of the passages and kind of going through all of these, it was just really eye-opening, like, okay, so, what are you doing with these things when really you should be putting this love, this devotion towards God, which my family and I do as well, but it was just kind of one of those things that was a little bit eye-opening for me. In terms of the historical world, Jesus' teachings were completely contrast at this time. The Romans were occupying Jerusalem and the Holy Lands during this moment, and majority of the population was living in poverty and were treated like slaves or close to like slaves. So the religious groups were Roman, basically co-conspirators, which makes them the enemy of Jesus. Another contrast was not only just of common practices, but also of misguided practices. Jesus in Matthew 6, 19 through 34 is in a disagreement with the status quo of this period. So his sermons and his teachings were causing unrest and complete fear within the Romans and the Pharisees. And I think with this unrest and fear within the Romans and the Pharisees and everyone else who just kind of did not believe that Jesus was Son of Man has a lot to do with what got him to the cross. Was everyone kind of batted an eye at him who weren't his followers and who were just thinking that he was saying this and he was blasphemy, but really he was truly Son of Man. He was Jesus. He was Son of God. So now as we go into contemporary world, I think taking the historical and the literary points of view kind of conclude with what I have to say within the contemporary world. So in Matthew 6, 19 through 34 are still valid today, 100%. This passage is teaching us humility, it's teaching us love, faith, and devotion to God, even in today's world. So regardless of what happened back then and what is happening now, you still cannot take your possessions here on earth with you to heaven. You still have to have your faith and your beliefs and your love for God and your devotion for God to get there. Those are your treasures that will get and remain in heaven. What really sets deep with me is that Jesus through Matthew is explaining to us that these values and these expectations are just as important today as they were back then. Your hearts and your treasures should be poured into God and heaven, and your earthly possessions are going to remain here, and that's just how it is.